they don't have the experience of growing up in family, sitting down around a table, having meals together, and living a settled life where mom and dad are there for them with time. Asked me to go to the jail in Frederick Street because they were going to hang a convicted criminal. It traumatized me that in cold blood, the state will take a man's life. Nobody is coming to clean up our mess. This is our house. And if we don't take our home seriously and love our home, nobody will love it for us.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Peace and blessings to you all. Welcome to another episode of Under the Pomegranate Tree. Today I am in Trinidad and Tobago and I'm joined with a very honorable guest. We have with us the Archbishop Charles Jason Gordon, who is the Archbishop of Port of Spain here in Trinidad and Tobago. The Archbishop is a respected voice on matters of faith, social justice, and youth empowerment. He is known for being very brave and courageous in speaking out on certain topics such as the death penalty, poverty, and also youth empowerment as well. Archbishop, blessings. How are you?
I'm very well, and it's good to be with you.
Thank you very much.
Under the pomegranate tree.
Under the pomegranate tree. Yeah, today we're based out of, where are we anyways?
We are in Port of Spain, which is in Trinidad and Tobago. It's the capital city.
Yeah.
And we are by the Savannah, which is the largest roundabout in the world. It's 2.3 miles around the Savannah. And it's one way, so you just go right around it.
I think we just drove around that.
You did?
We did about half.
We done a bit of that. Maybe we'll do the full round very, very soon. Archbishop, for those, obviously you're very popular and familiar here in your hometown. If you could kindly just introduce yourself to the wider audience.
So, I am Archbishop Charles Jason Gordon, born in Trinidad and Tobago. I was born in Woodbrook, which is not too far from here. Grew up in Trinidad and Tobago, went to Fatima College, which is also not too far from here. Lived in Arima for a while.
Okay.
And did my seminary formation here in St. John Vianney and the Uganda Martyr Seminary, which is on Mount St. Benedict. And after that, I went to Belgium, where I studied. I did postgrad studies, and then came back and worked a lot with the poor and those on the fringe of society. So my early thing was starting a program for young women who did not have skills, did not have a job. And we taught them skills, but we also taught them the skills to run a business. So that when they came out from us at home with a sewing machine, they could support themselves and their children. After, I also started up Trinity Television, which is a Catholic television in Trinidad and Tobago, which is 24/7 now.
Okay, nice.
On all the networks. So I started up that and trained people in that, a skill I learned while I was in the seminary. Then I went back. After that, I went to England to do doctoral work. That was from 1996 to 2000. And graduated from Heathrow College, which is the Jesuit college in the University of London, and with a doctorate in theology, pastoral theology, and came back here. And the Archbishop of the time, Edward Gilbert, thought it was nothing better to do than to send me to one of the poor inner city parishes that had 6 gangs in and around it, and to start figuring out what to do with that. That was one parish, and he gave me 2. The second parish had a neo-Gothic church that needed $15 million worth of renovation. So, so
An easy task.
yeah, well, my friends ask me, and what did you do him that he's so angry with you? But it really was one of the formative things in my life. I worked with gangs, and there were a lot of Muslim gangs. Well, one of the gangs was clearly a Muslim gang, and there was a mufti who used to come up and down, and he and I worked together with the gangs. I remember one day I went up to the gang early in the morning because they had a machine gun firing off the evening before in Ramadan. And I went up to quarrel with them. How could you in your holy month be doing this and escalating the violence? And Mufti was there. And I said to him, Mufti, you have to talk to these boys. Yeah. So he and I both chastised the gang leader and his men on this craziness that they were doing to bring to and saying you have to bring this violence down. I learned a lot about the underworld of Trinidad and Tobago during that time.
I mean, it's really great and refreshing to hear, because a lot of people come into places of power and trust either by right of, I don't know, affluence or money, or maybe they just know the right people. So it's great to know that Trinidad and Tobago is the hands of somebody who's got that grassroots level experience as well. I think that's good. So a lot of my questions that I'm going to be posing to you, I don't have many, so don't worry. But it's going to be around, social, the social status of Trinidad and a lot of the youth as well. So the first question I would like to ask you is, Archbishop, what do you see as the biggest social challenges facing young people in Trinidad and Tobago today?
And you want one or you want many? Because it's a hydra. It's so complex. I will say this generation did not receive what we received. They don't have the experience of growing up in family, sitting down around a table, having meals together, and living a settled life where mom and dad are there for them with time, and living in a village. So I grew up in a village, and where my bike took me, I went. Apart from that, I couldn't go anywhere. Most of the children now are on their own because mom and dad, or if it's just mom, have to be working, and that means when they come home, they don't have that kind of settledness that they need for themselves as humans to really find an identity and live out of that identity. They added to that, we are still in Trinidad using a 19th century classroom to teach digital natives, and it doesn't work. They're bored. They're bored in class because on their iPhone they could get all the knowledge that you're trying to give them, and they're not engaged in stimulation, and so many are opting out of the classroom and opting out of learning how to learn or being a lifelong learner, which also is a major challenge. Then you have unemployment of youth is very high, especially in Trinidad. Of whatever the unemployment rate, I think the youth unemployment is significantly high. I saw a number sometime back of 20-25%. But it is high, which means that you study hard, you do all of these things, and then what do you do afterwards? So that's another part. Then the social media has given everybody this very fragmented, short attention span, which means that even faith and going deeper into the inners of the faith is too difficult, because they just want to touch something lightly and go on it. Oh yeah, I watch a YouTube video on that, and they think that they now are masters of it, which means that they getting down to the depth of faith and allowing that faith to come from inside outwards is not as easy as it was a generation or two ago. that they are. And then now with AI is the greatest challenge that I am seeing. So I use AI. My brain is formed and have had a classical education. When a child uses AI to write their homework for them, it means that their brain is not being developed to be able to do mental tasks that are deep. They will produce good work, but the AI is doing something to stop brain development. And that neural development that we need, when that gets arrested, it's a problem. Marshall McLuhan is the grandfather of media theory, and he says every new media is an amplification of the human. It amplifies us. Every new media amputates the human. And AI is amputating our brain. I know it for myself. I put limits on what I would use AI for. I wouldn't use it to write an article from scratch. I will write my article, put it in AI, and ask it to check it for me. Ask it to do, interrogate it and so on. But with all of these complexities, youth and growing up young at this stage is challenging. And then add to that drugs, and now is no longer the light or heavy drugs that we had. It's all the in-between of the chemical drugs that young people have to face that are being slipped to them even when they do not understand what they're doing. And where's the hope though?
Thank you. I mean, you covered a lot and you put it, very eloquently, and you condensed it. It sounds a lot easier than it actually is, but everything that you mentioned, from, the broken homes right at the beginning, the lack of educational resources, then the lack of opportunities following an education, then the misalignment of the spirituality which is inside of people right now, the shortage of attention spans. I mean, so every single one of them is like a monopoly. You can go into it further and further and further. So which brings me on to my next question. In your view, what role should religious leaders play in addressing issues like some of those ones that you just mentioned?
The two places where religion has influence, the family and the school. And I think we need to do everything we possibly can to get those as right as we possibly can get it. When I have often said that the family is the load-bearing wall of civilization. That load-bearing wall, if it stands strong, civilization stands strong. When the load-bearing wall collapses, the whole civilization collapses with it. And if we don't work together to shore up that load-bearing wall of the family, then we are going to see even more challenge going forward. But on the other hand, education. How do we educate a digital native to want to learn and learn deeply? So it's no longer about the rote learning that we had in the 19th century. It's now about how do we get an inquiring mind? And how do we get a child to have an inquiring mind that wants to go beyond what the textbook says to the other sources? How do we do that? I think those two things, if we did them well, I think we'll have another way forward. But I would also say that this generation, unlike us, is really amazing. They are not, they're not in the shame base that we were. They're not afraid to talk about what's happening with them. They're not afraid to be open and vulnerable. But also, they want to make an impact on the world, and they want to make a difference to the world. And so they really want to do something different. They are not happy with the rat race that their parents have been running, and the secularism and business or economic cycles that the parents have been chasing down. They're not happy with that. They want something more interior than generations before.
So, you as an archbishop, what would you advise some of your bishops who are under your leadership to do in their local parishes and communities to enable and empower these youth? Are there any sort of set programs that are running currently?
So programs are good, important, and I think that's for helping a young person to pray and to pray regularly, helping a young person to understand when you're praying what you're actually doing, helping a young person understand who God is. For me, one of the most important things I do is go around and just listen to young people, engage them, and let them ask their questions. Like you have come, you're asking me questions. I don't know what questions you're going to ask me, but I'm okay. I just let them ask questions. And from that dialogue, I find a mutuality comes up where there's an exchange of ideas and an exchange of understanding that helps the young person find a deeper resource inside of themselves.
I really like that. You know, allowing somebody the platform just to talk, you know, express their views in a non-judgmental fashion. I think that's really important. Thank you so much. So, Archbishop, you've also spoken publicly against, you know, things like the death penalty. You know, what led you to take that stance, and how do you think society can focus more on rehabilitation rather than punishment?
We have enough studies now to know that the people who face the death penalty, 90 something of them are poor. Rich people don't easily get to the death penalty. And it doesn't say that the rich people are not doing crimes. They just have great lawyers. We know the OJ case, everybody knows the OJ case.
Yeah.
You have a great lawyer. So, which means then that we are really killing people for the crime of poverty. That's really what we're doing. And if you're killing people for the crime of poverty, then society itself has to ask itself, what kind of society are we? The other part of it is there are enough cases in England, the Guildford Four, there are enough cases where now that we have DNA, we realize that people who have been held incarcerated for a long time or been killed by the state were actually innocent. And if there's a chance that the person you're killing could be innocent, I think you really better more than pause. You better really do a little bit more than a pause there. Because for the sake of one innocent person being killed, I think society has to hold a very different task. When I was a young priest, Archbishop Pantin asked me to go to the jail in Frederick Street because they were going to hang a convicted criminal. And I went and was part of a team of ministers that accompanied him on the morning of his execution. And it traumatized me that in cold blood, the state will take a man's life. This is not a matter of passion. This is in absolute cold blood. You can't do that and not feel something that is not right about this. So for me, there are many reasons. In my tradition, Jesus was crucified by a mob, falsely convicted and executed. And I worship a crucified God. So for me, that's an added religious reason why the death penalty cannot make sense. When in the Old Testament we did an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, it was a limitation on the vengeance that was being done at that time. Today, we have to limit the vengeance again. When Jesus says, offer the wicked man no resistance. And he raised a much higher ethic of love. It's taken us a long time to understand that that has implications in all kinds of areas.
Thank you very much. The next two questions I had, You've already covered them right at the beginning. It was just around, how young people today feel disconnected with faith, and I think you touched on that in regards to the lack of resources in school as well, the lack of opportunities, which makes them disconnected with society as a whole, and then social media and AI has its own part to play. But is there anything else that you would like to add in regards to why young people you'd feel are less inclined to turn to faith and more inclined to maybe turn to drugs and violence?
I would say right now the balance is shifting a bit. I think there's something happening in the heart of our young people that is searching for something that is deeper than what we've previously seen. And because they have lived 2 generations now in a secular society where there is no meaning system, where the parents, even if they were of faith, many times are practical atheists because they're not living the values of their faith. And the children are seeing the contradiction between their parents and the faith that the parents are upholding or promoting. And I think there's something happening where this generation is asking or is in need of something deeper than the generation before it was stirring for them.
I understand where you're coming from. Okay, so how then can different religious communities in Trinidad and beyond work together to create real social change?
That's a beautiful question.
It's right up your street as well, isn't it?
What's the number one challenge that we face as a society? If I take Trinidad and Tobago, the number one challenge is the lack of a consistent value system. And because of that lack of a consistent value system in the society, what then happens is people then live their own value system, and corruption becomes a major part of all societal challenges. How did we get there? Well, once a religion is no longer the main voice in society, shaping the society, then the value system starts going very quickly after. I think we as religious people have to recognize that there's one thing that we have in common. And the one thing that we hold in common is that we believe that there is God, and we believe that that God requires something from us, and that God requires of us to walk or to live in a particular way. Now, we might vary on how we understand God, we might vary on what that way might be, but that there is a God that requires devotion, that also requires of us to live an ethical life. I think that we hold in common. And if religions together, rather than fighting each other, started to shore up this idea of there is God, and we all are accountable to God, and therefore we must live our lives in a particular way, it will help society find new containers to contain what we have been seeing of this secular corruption and grabbing for money and grabbing for things that really doesn't serve anyone. So we have a tradition of the common good, that the good of the whole must be more important than the individual gain of anyone. And how do we work together on some of these moral frameworks that all of our religious traditions hold?
As you were talking then, I couldn't help but remember one of my lessons that I was studying. It says that, because obviously me and you, we're cousins now in the Abrahamic faiths, right?
Absolutely.
So one of there's 3 common principles that every single messenger came with. And the first one, we call it Tawheed, which is, belief in one God. So ensuring that, listen, there's one God up there. and he does demand something from us.
Absolutely.
The second one was risala, which is prophethood. So God obviously has sent us into this life for a purpose, and he sent many messengers to come and deliver his message to us to ensure that we walk that straight and narrow path. And then the third one was akhirah, which is looking forward to the life after death. So don't just live this life as in
if
that's
this is
it.
it.
This is it, exactly. So
There's
we want to
something else after this that we must live our lives for.
Exactly. And as you were talking, those three common principles were coming to mind. So thank you for allowing me to recollect that lesson that I learned in my youth. And I do feel as though if we push those three principles even today, it'll make a massive difference. Okay, so I'm going to skip question 7.
Now you have me intrigued by what question 7 was, but go ahead.
No, I was hoping you'd say that just to allow me the opportunity to say it, just to see if you're going to elaborate a bit further. Because, one of the things that our Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was known for was Jawami al-Kalim, which basically means that he spoke less, but his meanings had a lot of weight behind them. So he wasn't a man of many words, but his words were really, really important. And I think as faith leaders, we need to encompass that, and you're demonstrating a lot of that now. So it's making some of my questions a bit redundant, but I'll ask it anyway. So it's like some young people feel that religion doesn't speak to their daily struggles. So what can religious leaders do to make faith more relatable and practical in today's society? You have touched on many things throughout, but is there anything that you would like to further reflect on?
The other piece where our traditions converge is in the mystical side of our traditions. That there's a convergence there. And that's really where I think our young people are yearning and searching and hungering. If a child does not get the basic formation of character in the family, where else do they get it? In religion and in the school. And so even just the basic formation of character is a great contribution to a child and to the next generation. After the basic foundation of character, the things we are speaking about in terms of the love of God and obedience to this God, and living by God's word, and recognizing that this world is not all, that after this world there is a world to come where we will be judged, and therefore we have to live in a particular way. I think those are some of the things which is the basic call of our religious traditions, to help our young people to understand that the short span of looking at life as getting what I can now is really not helpful.
That's beautiful. Before I move on to my next question, because as you were talking, I was just kind of reflecting on, my own journey, and one of the stories that I love to reflect on is the story of the son of Jacob, who Yaqub we call him, and he had a son called Yusuf. And he has a very beautiful story, and his story is one story that Allah has told us in the Quran from start to finish, and he dedicated a whole chapter, the chapter of Yusuf, to telling us that story. So when I ponder upon that story, I take a lot of lessons of. Is there any lesson from the prophets that you would like to share that you maybe think back on?
Oh, there's so many lessons. Right now, we have set readings that we read every day, and we've been reading from the letter to the Romans, reflecting on Abraham. And what is the nature of Abraham's faith is what we've been reflecting on. And that's something that has been fascinating to me. So St. Paul will say that before Abraham made covenant, he believed the promise. And the promise was that he would be the father of a multitude of nations. The promise was also that his descendants would be like the stars of the sky. Before the covenant, he believed the promise. And because he did not waver and he did not doubt God, that he was justified by his faith. And that has really been something I've been wrestling with over the last 3 days. Why? Because why do we waver? Why do we doubt? Abraham had far less than we had, because God appears to him as a voice. He never sees God. It's just a voice. And all he has is this voice and no history before it. We have the history of Abraham. We have all the prophets. We have a whole long history. Why do we waver? Why do we doubt? And I think the Abraham as father of faith is not by coincidence. The man had far less than we have. I mean, really far, far, far less. Because God appears to Abraham out of no concept that there is one God. But Abraham is willing to trust God and live his life for God, regardless of all the other voices around. That I find quite amazing.
Thank you for the reflection. Thank you so much. Okay, so what advice would you like to give young people who want to make a difference in their communities, but maybe feel powerless or unsupported?
You know, each of us were born for a purpose. God didn't just throw us into the world willy-nilly, and we didn't just hand up here kind of by accident. You need to find your sacred purpose. What was in God's intention when he created you? Because if you find your sacred purpose, you'll also find what it is he's asking of you. You'll also find the gifts that he's given to you to do what he's asking. And then if you take the faith of Abraham and you understand that he's asked you to do something, you know that he will also give everything that is required for that to be done also. And so if you are feeling powerless, well, that's a wonderful start. Because anyone who has given themselves to God has started by having to face what it is to be powerless, what it is to not allow the ego to control, what it is to stand there and recognize that who am I? Nothing at all, nothing. And who is God? Everything.
Thank you very much. That was very beautifully put. And it's something that I encourage my youngsters to do as well. If you find purpose in your creation, you'll find purpose in your life as well.
Absolutely. The two go hand in hand.
100%. So when you think about the future of Trinidad and Tobago, what gives you hope, Archbishop?
There's so many things that give me hope. This year, so we have Carnival every year. And the Calypsonians are like modern day prophets when they're doing their role as Calypsonian, or they're really leading people into a very bad life when they're not. But this year, there were 6 Calypsonians that wrote songs of hope for Trinidad and Tobago like I had not seen before for a long time. So in fact, I've pulled it together in a book, and I'm just finishing it up. Because, so if you take Freetown Collection, which is the one most known, where he says, take me home, marry me to the heart of Port of Spain, so if I leave, I'm bound to come again. One of the real challenges, and I think the biggest challenge to Trinidad and Tobago today, is that the citizen doesn't feel that love connection with their country. They don't feel it. We are a post-colonial society, and the really real was never here. The decisions were made in England, never here. And so from a philosophical perspective, the really real was never here, and so we never took here seriously. Naipaul will say manufactured labor camps, in outskirts of empire. When the citizen of Trinidad and Tobago is ready to take Trinidad and Tobago seriously, all the crime and violence that is happening will not be able to happen. The corruption will not be able to continue. The whole way in which we navigate our life right now, where anything goes and people are doing crazy, stupid things, it will not continue. Nobody is coming to clean up our mess. This is our house. And if we don't take our home seriously and love our home, nobody will love it for us. And I think when I saw the Calypsos this year moving to this covenantal love to the nation, I thought to myself, wow, this is beautiful.
Thank you. That's it for me. Archbishop, I'm all out of questions. But I do feel as though we can definitely hit up a part 2, whether it's on this side of the pond or that side of the pond. The next time you're over in the UK, we would love to invite you over. You showed us great hospitality today when we came. I mean, we did come bearing some gifts. I hope you appreciate the frankincense that we got you. And when you come over there, we'll like to repay this hospitality and this spread that you put out for us. Thank you so much, Archbishop, for joining us on today's episode. Guys, that's it from us today. I'll see you in the next episode. Peace out.